Hello, welcome to another Classical Top 5 special edition with me, Tommy Pearson. Our guests today are from London Brass, which is a collective of the UK brass elite, the finest freelancers and principals from the major orchestras. They've got a new album out of Christmas favourites, and on December the 18th we'll be presenting a free online Christmas taster concert on YouTube. So we'll be talking about that. And since this is the Classical Top 5 podcast, we'll also be choosing our top 5 pieces for brass. With me are Gareth Small, principal trumpet of the Halle Orchestra, Andy Crowley, freelance trumpeter and prolific studio musician, and Richard Bissell, ex-LSO and LPO horn player and now freelance, and also one of that rare breed, it says, a horn player who can swing. We'll definitely be talking about that. Welcome, guys. Thank you very much for being here and doing this.
Hi.
Andy, maybe you could start by just giving me a little potted history of London Brass, and perhaps more importantly from where they came with the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble.
Okay, so the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble, as we all know, was incredibly busy and prolific brass group in the 70s and 80s. And I remember going to concerts in London, and it was always a great, big event, and very inspiring to young players. When he retired, he obviously thought it wasn't a great idea to still call it the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble, and two or three members wanted to obviously carry on the work because there was still a great market for brass ensembles touring and making recordings. So they thought up this really unique and individual name called London Brass, being brass players from London.
Yes.
And I think those players were Roger Harvey, Frank Lloyd, Chris Mowat, Dave Purser, even Ray Premru, bass trombone. All these guys are members of Philip Jones, and so they decided to keep that work line going, and that's what happened.
Because when you look at the list of players that played with the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble, it is extraordinary. I mean, it's basically every one of the great players that's ever been, really, in the last 40, 50 years, isn't it?
Certainly, it's got a very impressive list of players. That if you look at the back catalogue of the recordings from Philip's time, all the names that I'd heard of when I was a student, that they were all on these records, and Jimmy Watson, John Wilbraham, Michael Laird, names from the past, but they really created a great sound, which we now still keep that tradition going.
Well, I want to talk about that sound, actually. Gareth, with you, we were at college at the same time. I know that names like some of the names that Andy's just said, but also Elgar Howarth, Ifor James, the horn player, John Fletcher, the tuba player, Dennis Wick, Eric Crease, all these names. They were such legends around. I mean, many of them, of course, were also teaching in the colleges at the same time. But you must have been inspired by those guys when you were a young trumpeter as well.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, Tom, one of my main memories was when London Brass came into the academy and just happened to just turn up and start playing a concert with Empire Brass, who were there. I don't know if you remember that, but London Brass, they just said, "Oh, there's a concert going on. Let's go and sort of hijack it a bit and play a few tunes." And I just thought I was in awe of Andy when I was in college, and Buster, Mark Bennett, and Richard, of course. And then I got to do a course in Schleswig-Holstein with a brass group. Somebody dropped out, and they just rung me up and said, "Oh, you couldn't help us out in Germany, could you? We're doing this brass course," and it was hosted by London Brass over in Germany, and it was one of the best weeks I've had. And I just remember in that time I thought, I really want to carry on and do this sort of thing for a living, because I sort of, at that stage, I was maybe going to go down the jazz type route because I was playing in the academy big band and things like that. But after that week, I thought, this is it. I want to do brass, orchestral brass playing, and it was with these guys.
Richard, it was such a brand name, wasn't it? The Philip Jones Brass Ensemble. I mean, to the extent I know that when we were at the Royal Academy of Music, Philip Jones was the principal of Trinity College at that time. And I remember someone saying, "Oh, Philip Jones," and it was as if my brain said, "Oh, you mean of Philip Jones Brass Ensemble?" Because it had such a powerful brand name to it.
It was hugely influential, as Andy said, and we all bought their albums when they came out, and hero worshipped the players and were stunned by what they could do. Inevitably, Philip Jones gets older, like we all do, and he had to sort of decided to stop. But he moved into the sort of more admin roles. And when I was starting at teaching at Guildhall, he was there as the head of the brass, wind and brass percussion department as well for some time, short time. But yeah, he was a hugely influential name, of course. But I think things move on. Obviously, nothing stays the same, and it's good. The people we come and go, and everything evolves naturally, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, what Andy said was one of the great things that they established, of course, was so much repertoire to play. There was the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble Edition, I think, or whatever it was called, which so many youth brass players would come across as they were students and everything. It's actually a huge music legacy, isn't it?
It was, yeah. I mean, because I think up until that point there was not very little published music for 10-piece.
No.
And they got a deal with Chester's, I think, to publish all their arrangements. And of course, we as little boys and teenagers, music students, started playing all these arrangements, and we're very fond of some of them actually. You know, this sort of very nostalgic. You play certain pieces, and everybody goes, "Oh, I remember that." You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was hugely influential. You can't sort of overestimate it, really.
When I took over running the group, because when I joined, which was about a year after Philip Jones retired, so London Brass had been going for about a year. Now I sort of was sort of one of the piccolo players in the group when Mike Laird left. About 10 years after that, when I started running the group and Dave Purser retired, I had to go to his house to get the to pick up the all the files and all bits of equipment that were owned by the group and things like that. And one of the things I had to pick up was the library, and I wasn't quite prepared for what I was going to just about fit it in my car. I mean, there were just rows. I mean, Dave Purser's wall was there were just shelves and shelves of this stuff, and when I counted it up, well, I got a database, and there were 400 works there. A lot of original works as well. So that's what Philip had done for the repertoire. For brass ensembles, and most of that was stuff that had been written for his group. So we've got that legacy. Yeah, huge library, which fortunately I don't have at my house anymore. It's in the Royal College now, under strict supervision. So yeah, we've got that legacy, that huge library, plus so much new repertoire which we've made our own and which has sort of developed since it's become London Brass. Maybe which we can get into talking about in a while, about with the extension of the sort of type of players we've got in the group, because it's not just legit classical players anymore. We've got crossover players, out and out jazz players as well. So it's extended the repertoire massively.
Yeah, so what I mentioned in the introduction, Richard, about being a horn player that can swing, is that a part of, because you do a lot of arrangements, don't you, as well?
I do,
for the group. So it's included in that, is it, your ability to swing with the jazz?
Well, I hope so. I mean, the thing about playing a French horn is that it's not necessarily known for its jazz leanings. And most classical players, not just horn players, but most classical players are very straight-jacketed in how they're trained. It's got to be very, very, very precise, very neat, very beautiful, nice note shapes, and all this sort of thing. And so classical players aren't very good at swinging. But I grew up as a teenager playing in local big bands and listening to jazz, so I just sort of assimilated the style, and I feel like I can fit in. Let's put it that way, as well as I can to do it. And so a lot of my arrangements I've done have been influenced by that, I suppose. Sort of my harmonic language and the style I write in. We're all influenced by what we've learnt growing up, haven't we? So that's what makes us all different. But
yes,
yeah,
that includes, I think, the Philip Jones stuff, those arrangements, because I was just thinking of the range of music that was available in those arrangements. I mean, Susato suites, I always remember when I was young, brass players playing that endlessly, and then right up to the brand new stuff that was written especially for them. The range of music that suddenly became available, or not suddenly, but over the course of time became available for brass ensemble, it's huge, isn't it?
It's massive, and I think those old style way of playing, Philip's group was very, well, you might say refined compared to where we are now. Nothing wrong in that at all, but it's beautiful playing. But with time, as I say, we've included different members in the group who played different styles, and you can't carry on playing the same repertoire all the time, great as it is. So we've branched out and made it a little bit more variety in our programs, I think.
Yeah, I think Richard brings up a very good point here, Gareth. I'd like to know your thought on this. The sound, the way in which people play now, it is very different to a lot of those earlier recordings. Funnily enough, when they were all re-released, I went out and bought all of the Philip Jones Ensemble, the classic recordings, and having had them in my memory for nearly 30 years, to then hear them again, I was actually quite surprised at how straight-laced a lot of them were. Very refined, beautiful playing, very musical, but really different to a lot of the brass playing that I'm hearing now. What is the main difference, do you think, and why has that happened?
I don't know, but if you listen to like the Surprise album of London Brass, it's absolutely light years away from those old Philip Jones records.
Yes,
and I just think the way that people have to earn a living these days, it's not. I mean, a lot of the guys in that era just played classical music. That was it, and then there were guys who literally were just in the studio, and that's all they did. Yeah. It wasn't that much crossover, I don't think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but compared to now, where all of us are in orchestral jobs, all of us do studio work, all of us do everything and anything that we have to that's put in front of us. So I think it's inevitable that the way that we play. If we play in a Queen number, you're going to play it differently to if we're doing a Liszt prelude or something, Yeah.
Yeah, it is true. I think that back in the 70s and 80s, trumpet players, that I'm thinking of, who I mentioned earlier, like Philip or John Wilbraham. They earned such a good living just doing what they did, within that circle of, that classical music sort of setting, without ever having to go in to do a West End show or I cannot imagine that they ever went and did them. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that John Wilbraham or Gary House, it just wasn't part of what they did. Mm. So I think the whole thing is what players do now is encompasses a much wider. They've got a much genres that we end up having to sort of play in. You just have to do it to earn a living. So I think that's probably what it's a lot to do with. And also colleges, you're encouraged to be like that and soak up all different types of music. So it's really what we've over the years, and I think it's changed, but players, especially now, they're just used to so many different types of music. Yeah. So I think that's probably a big reason why the way that brass music has expanded.
Audiences have changed as well, haven't they, Andy?
Of
I would say.
course, yes.
You know, people expect to hear some more sort of modern music and a bit more accessible music that they're listening to on the radio.
Yeah, they definitely like. I mean, the format that we have with the group is you know, for most concerts that we do, it starts off with, maybe some Philip type sort of pieces, you know, classical things, Bach, but it always ends up, you know, with a big shout up at the end, you know, sort of, you know, with you know, some jazz arrangements or you know, and the whole thing opens up completely, and the audience love that.
Yeah,
that different type of, because I guess it's, you know, brass music, you know, the sound of it is fantastic, but two hours of the same type of music are pretty wearing, and I think that applies to all sorts of music, but you know, particularly in brass, you know, altering the tone color, the sound, the dynamic range. So what you get with changing the styles of music opens up so many different, you know, sensory things that, you know, the audience can latch onto it. And otherwise, there's a potential that if you just put on 2 hours of Gabrieli and Bach, however lovely it is, it could get a bit testing to sit through that. So we try and make it as varied as possible.
I asked you all for your top 5 brass pieces, and I must say, looking through them, if you did perform them all in a row, you'd all be absolutely knackered. There's a lot of fanfares in there, which I think is quite revealing, of course, because I guess brass players play a lot of fanfares. Of course they do, and probably the most famous music written for brass are fanfares. But some really unusual ones in there as well. It's been fascinating reading, and those that are listening to the podcast, I shall post up everybody's choices on our Facebook page, because there's a lot of repertoire to get through here and a lot of unusual stuff too. Andy, I wanted to ask you about your 5, because you it's very interesting mix of people in there. But you've got Fanfare for the Common Man in there, which I guess probably is one of the most famous pieces for brass and percussion, isn't it? Yeah,
but it's not your sort of typical fanfare.
No.
You know, with flourishes and the sort of thing you'd expect if you heard an introduction to God Save the Queen or something, you know, with fanfare trumpets of the military or something. It's not that feel. It's called a fanfare, but of course it's very evocative, and you know, it's got a soaring thing about it as well with the trumpet lines.
Yeah. And sorry, Andy, and Richard, one of your choices was La Paris Fanfare by Ducasse, which and again is for any brass player is an absolute classic, isn't it? I mean, I know from my youth orchestra days, if a brass ensemble did anything in another little concert, they always did this piece. Always.
They did. Yeah. I think it's big. It's, as you say, most brass players have played it for the first time when they get to college.
Yes.
And it's a very stirring piece. I mean, it's the only bit of that piece which was has ever performed. It was a ballet he wrote in the early 1900s, and which I don't suppose he's ever done. But the fanfare is very stirring, and it's very evocative of very French. And in actual fact, when I was thinking about pieces to put on this list, what I've always quite liked is, although I didn't put it on the list because it's always knackering to play, is the first movement of Messiaen's L'Ascension.
Yes.
Which is absolutely gorgeous, but it's a bit repetitive and it's terribly tiring. But I could hear bits of that sort of in La Paris, just little hints of it, his harmonic language. And it's a stirring fanfare. I guess everybody feels great playing it, so that's why I was on it. Yeah.
And some distance away from it, you also got Brassman's Holiday, the Billy Mays Big Fat Brass in there.
Well, that was very influential when I got to the academy. In the late 70s, everybody was playing it. It was made in 1959, I think, but it's obviously everybody loves it. It's incredible playing on it. Billy May was a trumpet player himself, and I don't know. I assume everybody knows it, but it's one of these records. I wore it out listening to it. The arrangements are incredible, and there's brilliant playing on it. So that had to go on.
And Gareth, you also chose Fanfare for the Common Man as one of yours, but you also got hands down my favourite ever Maynard Ferguson track, which is "Give It One." So many people have done "Give It One," but nobody did it as fast as Maynard Ferguson's band in the 70s. What an amazing piece that is!
Yeah, but it was written by a British trumpet player, Alan Downing, and made famous by Derek Watkins, of course, who probably sent it to Maynard. I don't know. Andy, can you tell me if is that true?
I don't know the background on it, actually. No, I know Alan Downing wrote it, and there's been lots of versions, and I know Derek certainly played it. Yeah, but I don't know whether I don't know how it came about.
Yeah.
There's an amazing version on YouTube of it with Maynard from 1970 something. Pete Erskine on drums, very young Pete Erskine on drums. It's so outrageous.
I'll see
you just can't help but watch it.
He's so full of swagger as well when he's just struck.
That's great. Yeah.
When he's playing.
Yeah. Any trumpet player that say they're not impressed by high notes, they're lying.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
He used to live in Manchester, Maynard Ferguson.
Yeah.
And John Barclay used to work with him a bit. I think he was avoiding tax in London, in America at the time, so he sort of went to hide out in Manchester. Not sure whether you could put that on.
That's all right. I don't think Maynard's around to defend himself anymore. But so many of his great recordings. Anyway, it's great to see that in your list, Gareth. Can you talk to me a little bit about before we get to the Christmas album, a little bit about the new pieces that you've had written for you in recent years for London Brass? What are the key works in your rep that you've commissioned yourselves? Any of you?
Well, we've had quite an impressive list, of composers that have written for us. Over the last 20 or so years. I mean, Mark Anthony Turnage from the contemporary world has written. Michael Nyman, Richard Rodney Bennett. Yeah, fantastic piece that is. That's his.
I love playing that. We should do that again, Andy.
Yeah, it's a brilliant piece.
Players, isn't it?
And so, on the other side, we've had sort of jazz crossover pieces from Django Bates, Mike Gibbs.
Paul Hart did.
Paul Hart wrote he wrote an incredible piece which we play all the time, which is his take on the Surprise Symphony by Haydn. It's incredible.
We used to do those Arts Council contemporary music tours, didn't we? And we get
we used to do those
for that.
Yeah,
some wacky pieces as well.
We've done lots of wacky pieces as well.
Play with all his toys, didn't he?
Oh yeah, that Bayo's Way. Harrison Birtwhistle, Takamitsu. Actually, I'm not sure whether Takamitsu wrote for London Brass, but probably for Philip. So there's a great variety of pieces which we have in the library, and every now and again we do pull out for concerts. It's just that we were talking about the audience, is that you've just got to try and balance it so that every now and again we'll put an original work in there which we particularly like. And in addition to that, we've collaborated with other people as well, like John Sermon, Jack DeJohnette. We did an album for them on the ECM label, which was taken from a live concert, and that was amazing as well. So,
do all the composers take to it easily? Because brass writing for brass is particularly brass ensemble is quite a particular thing, and it's a very particular sound. It's different to writing for brass within an orchestral setting, I think, which presumably a lot of these composers will do most of the time.
I think you can tell the composers who know what they're doing. I mean, the ones who have been classically schooled in composition, they generally know what they're doing. You come unstuck sometimes with sort of crossover media type composers who particularly have been grown up not working with real players and real instruments and the reality of what brass players can do. So we have to adjust sometimes with that. But I mean, that's no reason why they shouldn't write music, and some of it is very good and very different from what we'd expect and sometimes it's good to be pushed in a direction you're not used to. And
yes, there's a limit to that, though, isn't there? I mean, this is one of the conversations I have in my regular series called In Session, where I talk to people about playing in sessions. And in fact, Andy is going to be my very next guest on that series. Is a lot of the composers who use samples a lot, who don't seem to quite realise that you do at some point need to breathe, or and indeed sometimes just simply can't play the note that they're asking you to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the theme of this has always been that this is happening more and more. But I guess but it's also much more stark when you're writing for a brass ensemble, isn't it? Because there's no hiding behind strings or woodwind as well. In that.
And you can't write that sort of stuff. The stuff you have to play in the studio, where you have to end up cutting it into 8-bar chunks because it's unplayable. Yeah. Normally, you can't write that if you want it to be played in concert. So. That's they have to learn how to do that, really.
Gareth, you're principal of the Halle, which is your day job. Although I guess this year there's no such thing as a day job this year, is there? But we could talk about that. But is playing in something like London Brass, it's more like a pleasure thing for you, because you've got your day job, there you are as principal in the orchestra, and then there's this sort of great luxury, if you like, of sitting with all your great friends in an ensemble like that.
To be fair, the whole group is made up of orchestral musicians from the LPO. Richard's in Covent Garden. There's a lot of guys in the Philharmonia, and we basically love touring with London Brass. We're treated like royalty in Europe. We don't tend to do many concerts in the UK, which is unfortunate, which is a real shame. But we do tour Germany an awful lot, Italy, all over Europe, and it's just some of the arrangements that Richard Bissell and Richard Edwards and other people have done for us. It's just fantastic to play, and it's just a joy to just be on stage with like 10 musicians who have all got respect for each other, and even the Deps who come in, they absolutely love it. Everyone thinks it's the best thing they've ever done. It's brilliant. I love it.
Well,
I love spending time with the guys.
It has been an extraordinary year for everyone to do with performance and concerts, of course, like no other really. But here you are. We're very close to Christmas, and you've got this album, A Joy to the World. And also, you're going to be doing this thing on YouTube next week. So who wants to be the one that tells me all about, first of all, the album, the Christmas album? Who'd like to talk to me about that?
Maybe Richard.
Yeah, Richard.
This is an album which we've been talking about making for a long time. Over the years, we've accrued new arrangements which haven't been recorded. And we've all said we come back off a tour and we say, we should make another album. But it's you never get around to it. We're all too busy or whatever. But this year there's no particular excuse for that. As far as time's concerned, we were supposed to be going on a big tour now around Germany, and when that fell out, a very kind fan of ours, a benefactor, said she would put up some money to help fund a CD as a sort of a consolation for all the work that fell out, for which we're very grateful. So we decided to make this album in November, and part of the cost was covered, part of it wasn't. And so we did these new arrangements which hadn't been recorded, plus some old favourites which we wanted to re-record in our way, and also to get control of the recordings as well, which is quite important.
Yes, yeah, of course. Okay, so give me some titles. What can people expect on the album?
Well, I've done a couple of arrangements, the eponymous Joy to the World, and also In the Bleak Midwinter. Richard Edwards has done Oh Holy Night. The tymp player in the LPO, Simon Carrington, has done a fabulous arrangement for the trumpets of the Christmas Oratorio number. And then what else is on there, Andy? There's
this a lot of composers that tick the Christmas box. This Nutcracker. There's bits of Prokofiev, Trade Pack. There's Vivaldi, of course, Winter. We recorded that before, but we've done a slightly different version this time. We've got some amazing players playing a lot of them, running around, like Philip Cobb and James Fountain. In addition to the regular 10, we've got some extra help and percussion as well. Just give it, that Christmassy feel with some tubular bells, whatever.
And jingle bells, surely.
Jingle, well, don't want to give
Sleigh
too
bells.
much away. You'll hear some sleigh. Yeah, you might even hear some horse whinnies somewhere.
Of course you are.
But yeah, it's a Christmas album basically, and we've been meaning to do it because for many years we've been with Teldec Warner, and we just wanted our own album, which we didn't have to purchase from someone else. We just re-recorded. It was due an update really. So that's what we've done, and we're looking forward to putting it out there.
And Gareth, tell me about this thing you're doing on YouTube then on the 18th of December.
Okay, so we've recorded three of, when we recorded the album, we recorded some video, which Richard's son was involved in a company. So we recorded that. So we're going to put that out. And a little bit of chat during, so it's a free concert for anyone who wants to listen. And then after that, we're going on Horn Hangouts with Sarah Willis from Berlin Phil. So if you're not doing anything next Friday, you can hear a little bit of London Brass at 7:00, and then hear us chat. Well, it's a bit like your format now, which is going to ask us some questions, I'm guessing. And yeah, that's what we're going to do.
And just tell people where exactly they can find your stuff on YouTube. What do they search for?
That will all be coming out very, very shortly. With our social media, we've got we employ an administrator, Esther Jackson, and she's sort of very good at whipping us all up when we need to do something. Yes. I sort of did, over the years, obviously did the majority of the background work, because obviously, when people see us on stage, there's so much that goes into getting us there in the first place. There will be YouTube links, and there will be social media, Facebook things coming up very, very shortly. So
is that on our website, Andy?
That will be there as well. Yeah, I've got I'm uploading things at the moment, so we're just timing it so that it all happens. 2 or 3 days before there'll be a big build up. But just go onto our Facebook page, and everything will be there that Esther will get all the information put up very, very shortly. So
okay, and I shall put up that information on our pages too. I just want to finish by asking each of you about this year in each of your sort of positions, and what you've been doing this year, and how you've been dealing with it, because obviously none of you have been working as much as you would normally expect. Richard, how about you in the Opera House? What's been going on?
Well, not a lot is the short answer. When we stopped in March, I think it was, we all obviously had that initial 3 months doing nothing, and then there's a bit of stop-start. Is it on? Is it off? Is it on? Is it off? And eventually we managed to get a little bit going in September time. That was cut short again, but luckily we're about to start. Actually, in fact, I'm going to go off now to do the first performance of our run of the Nutcracker.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a reduced version, but nonetheless still effective, I imagine, which is good news that we've actually, some sort of normality is approaching.
Absolutely. Although here we are sitting here with all these rumours that London's going to go into Tier 3 again.
Yes.
So who knows what's going to happen. Andy, what about you? I mentioned at the beginning you're an incredibly busy session player. There have been a lot of sessions going on, haven't there? And under sort of weird, slightly odd circumstances within the studios like Air and Abbey Road. Have you been doing any of those?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I mean, when it went into the first lockdown, we didn't know exactly how it was all going to pan out, but very soon into the first lockdown, I was getting some inquiries about doing remote recording. Yeah. So I've got a studio set up here. So within the first week, I'd actually put my tracks down for a Hollywood film in my bedroom. But
it's amazing, isn't it? Amazing what you can do now. It really is amazing.
Yeah. So and I did a few more of those, and then we were allowed back into studios, but in a very limited way. So yeah, I've been going to do brass sessions and things, but it's on a much scaled back.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be nowhere near the amount of work that we did have, and some composers had, there probably was a backlog of things that needed to be done before the first wave came in. So that there was a little bit of rush of stuff then, but then it really tailed off. I found myself walking my dog quite a lot.
Yeah.
and trying to get the motivation to do the practice, which actually was good for the first few months. It sort of, I think a lot of musicians found it really, right, I'm really going to get back into it, and see if I can still play the things I could do 30 years ago.
Yeah.
and a lot of friends of mine, really got into that. It's just got a bit wearing in the last few months.
So
everyone's just getting a really bit fed up with it now.
So many of my musician friends said, "Oh, finally, I've got the time to practice."
Yeah.
Now, what's on the telly? It's that kind of thing. Gareth, how about the Halle? How's the Halle been dealing with all of this?
We've started doing some series of concerts that's going to be on our own channel. In fact, I did one last night, a film music show in the Bridgewater Hall. They've got an extension to the stage, and it's a full orchestra there. We're actually in the choir stalls, all the brass. We're just up in the choir seats so that everyone can be distanced. So we've done 3 concerts so far, doing a varied programs. We've recorded some. In fact, I've got Hugh Watkins has written a fanfare for the Halle, so we just did that with brass. I wasn't going to include that in our list because no one will have heard it yet. I think it just came out last week. So and we've done all sorts of things really. And we've got I've got Quiet City coming up in January, and Soldier's Tale in March. So we're doing a few things. Obviously, it's nowhere near as busy as it should be. We should be all over the country every night pretty much, but it'll get there. Hopefully this vaccine will work.
Yes. Well, I think, and goodness, we're all looking forward to seeing London Brass back on the stage very, very soon. Thank you very much, all of you, Richard, Gareth and Andy. It's fantastic to talk to you about all things brass. Quick reminder, then the virtual concert is next Friday, the 18th of December, 7 o'clock in the evening UK time. And the album is called Joy to the World, Christmas with London Brass. Guys, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.